Let me introduce our guest, Don Whittle, ICF Membership Director. He's been with the International Coaching Federation since 2008. And prior to that, he had an 18-year career in the Olympic sports, which I didn't know until today, and I was kind of mind blown by, including being on the U.S. committee where he supported the athletes by investing in their training to reach their potential, which is what a good coach does, at the Olympic Games. But now I want to learn more about kind of what he's doing with the ICF and how that applies to you and how it definitely applies to you in your work toward becoming a certified coach. So, hi, Don.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm just always thrilled to come on these iPEC webinars because I am so impressed with what iPEC is doing,
Good.
not only in the US, but globally. I'm very impressed with their training. And of course, it's certainly, let me just put this in context. ICF is not in the training business. We accredit training programs that meet our standards. And we're also a membership organization primarily. And then we also have this thing called the ICF credential, which are 3 different credentials. And probably why I'm here today to answer a lot of those questions. So good to be here.
So as an admissions coach, I have conversations all the time with prospective students, and they're always asking me, what does it mean that a school is ICF accredited? Like they get that there is an ICF. Well, maybe we should start there. I mean, if someone's really basic, what is the ICF? You just kind of described it a little bit, but what is the value of the ICF?
So the value of ICF, let me go back just a little bit and put it in context. Sure. ICF is in its 25th year of existence. I've been here 13 years, actually got here in 2007, and I've been doing membership since that time. So it was founded 25 years ago by a group of pioneer coaches that really were forward thinking about the profession and knew they needed to create a bigger community outside of this group that was currently meeting and talking about some really exciting things. And so it just gradually expanded worldwide, and to today we're about 37,000 members, 30,000 credential holders, and about 140 countries around the globe. So that's really what we're into, is membership and providing value for members to be to coach better through a little professional development, as well as be part of a community and just be a great part of this global community of coaches worldwide that exists today, even during the pandemic.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that was helpful context for people. So I'd love to hear a little bit more. I'm trying to put myself in the head of someone who's maybe they're just exploring the idea of coach training, and they're wondering, because I get this question sometimes. I have a lot of intuitive ability. I've been coaching in some way or another my whole life. So why exactly might I need to get certified, especially at an ICF accredited program?
So I would always answer that in that, and I too have come across a lot of people who come to me and ask, what is coaching? How do I get started? What's this whole thing about coach training? Why do I have to go? I've kind of got this, right? Because I used to be coming from the Olympic world, I used to be a hockey coach or a skiing coach or what have you. And it's like, well, okay, but this is a little bit different in terms of what we're talking about. And it's all about listening and not giving feedback per se and not consulting with individuals. It's this whole transactional process of individual coaches working with clients, in a way that's really meaningful to draw out of them their best potential, and answering and knowing that they have the answer themselves to the questions. It's how the questions are framed.
Yeah, that's totally it. I mean, I think that being a good coach is first and foremost believing that the person has the answer to their own questions and that it's not your job to tell them or to give them advice. That's not coaching. What I told someone recently who asked me that question was, hey, it's awesome to start with like a baseline of being really intuitive and empathetic and having, being good at listening and giving people advice is a really great place to start. But often what happens is that you might understand to a point where someone needs help or where they might need shifting, but it doesn't mean that when you get there that you know what to do with it. When you get to the place where you maybe encounter their deepest fears or their blocks, that you have any idea exactly what to do with that or how to work with that in a way that's actually like healthy for that person or that's actually useful to them. And so going through a program that's been accredited is first and foremost, I think, a good idea because they've had to pass some sort of standard and they've had to sort of prove that they have core competencies that, they can deliver to you so that when you encounter situations, you know how to handle them as a coach. So I'd actually love to hear more about what are some of like the core things that, a school has to do to prove that it's like, that it gets that ICF stamp of approval.
Yeah, sure, Rachel. And so what we're all about here when we're accrediting coach training programs is there's a couple different designations or levels, if you will, of accreditation. And certainly the highest is what we call the accredited coach training program, ACTP, of which iPEC is in that category. And those are the most comprehensive programs where it is covering everything in terms of the ICF 11 core competencies, the code of ethics, how to implement that in your practice, and really meeting our definition, what we call the ICF definition of coaching. To have all that in its entirety and have at least 125 coach specific training hours covering that piece. Also ensuring that the training is delivered. You can deliver it virtually and in person, but you're not going to just take it from a book per se, or it has to be live coaching where there's interaction, where there's questions and answers that are always available to occur. And so that's the real difference in terms of an accredited program. And I know iPEC, correct me if I'm wrong, is your program is 400 or 300?
320.
Okay, I knew 400.
320 hours. It's a lot. I mean, it's from what I understand, it's one of the more robust ones out there.
No question. So our standards are only for that particular designation of completely comprehensive. You only have to have 125 hours.
Okay.
Now, you guys obviously go way beyond that, which to me tells me that you're covering absolutely everything to the best detail you can. And certainly someone is getting a full, well-rounded experience as a coach, having the opportunity to practice the skills while you're there in those four walls of iPEC coach training. So I am very impressed with, and I will say this I can tell you I've got access to a lot of records and everything, and iPEC is just a really, really a well-respected program, not only in the U.S. but around the world. So I just wanted to give that there.
Thank you. I think that's a lot to hear that from you. And we are not paying him to say that. He's just saying.
I'm not. No, I'm not. There's no. I'm doing this because I believe in what you guys are doing and believe in, and making sure that people who are coming into coaching and want to become coaches are going to programs that best fit what they're looking for.
Well, we have a question from someone, Lydia, who's asking what makes iPEC different from other programs. And I'm happy to answer that. But I think in doing that, I actually want to expand that and just give you something to think about when you're looking into accredited coach training in general. Which is when I tell people, like when they ask me what the iPEC difference is, what I usually say is, listen, when you're looking into good coach training, there's a few things you really need to be exploring. One is absolutely on the more logical level, how many hours a program is offering you. Because, 125 is great, but when you compare that with, our program, which is 320, that's 3 times more coach training. So you got to imagine that there's a depth and a comprehensiveness that you're going to reach that you might not get to a certain level in other programs. And it might not mean that they're not completely competent and they're not giving you great education, but there's depth and layers here that you're just not going to get to if you don't spend that much time in coach training. But on another level, I think that it's really important, if you want to become a good coach, that you have a coach training experience that allows you to do 2 things. One, you learn how to get to the root of someone's problem, and you can really shift that. I think a lot of coaching, I'm sure you know this, Don, because you've probably met like infinite coaches compared to me. There's a lot of coaches that sort of exist on a branch level of the tree. I think of it as a tree. There's a branch level and then there's a root level. And a lot of coaching can kind of exist on the let's just solve the problem of the day that you have, right? Like, oh, I hate my job. I wish I had a new job. Great. Let me help you find a new job. As a coach, I feel like my job is to get a little bit deeper than that and to get to why is it that you're unsatisfied with your job? Maybe it has a lot to do with the job, but it might have a lot to do with your kind of core programming, your fears, your beliefs, your limitations. And if we don't start there, then we're probably not going to create sustainable change. So that's a huge part, I think, of what makes good coach training. And another is that there's such a difference between intellectually understanding the work of coaching and really integrating it. And I think you were touching on that earlier, that there's something that it's not just that a program needs to be experiential. I think that's really important, but that it's not enough to just hand you a textbook and tell you read this and then you'll be a good coach. You have to kind of integrate it. You have to be willing to do the work on yourself and to be put through the rigor of going through a program that's going to expect you to show up and confront maybe some of your own inner limitations and baggage and value growth. To find all of that in one place can be kind of difficult, I think, but that's my take. I'm curious if you have any additions to that as a longtime coach.
So I agree to everything you're saying here, and no question about it. And I think the beauty of coaching is you don't have to be one type of coach. For example, a life coach or a career coach or a executive coach. There's a lot of niches out there right now. However, I think the real difference is as you come in to a training program, and if you're really going for a program that may not be comprehensive in nature, you may not be able to expand your portfolio of services, if you will, in terms of niche areas you're going to work on, unless you really go to a program that's comprehensive and, like you say, is really exploring in depth a lot of the big issues that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I am so I've got a great coach that I've been working with for a number of years here, thanks to ICF. And oh my gosh, look forward. We meet every 2 weeks, and it's push, push, push in a good way. I set the agenda, but he's right there letting me know. He knows me really well about, where I should be or where I should be aspiring to, or Don, this is incorrect. You really need to, take a look at this. But I get to find my way, and that's really what a good coach is all about, is to have the goals out there that you're mutually agreeing to attaining. And I can't say enough about it.
So and accountability, it sounds like what you're saying,
yes,
right?
Yes.
You're just not going to do it sometimes unless someone's holding you accountable to doing the work.
No question. No.
Someone else is asking if we are offering in-person training during COVID. It's dependent on what time of year we're in. Right now, yes, our next training sessions are starting in November. So we are offering in-person classes limited in the US. You can explore our schedule and locations page on our website if you want to know more, but we have LA, Chicago, and New Jersey in person, and everything else is happening in the US is happening over Zoom. So virtual training, I think, has been kind of a blessing in this time, and Zoom has been really great. So all of our trainings are still happening the same way. They're 3-day long, intensive training experiences, but they're happening, morning to evening on Zoom instead of in person. And it's kind of amazing to see how well it is working and how people are still getting to know each other, and they're bonding, and they're being sent to breakout rooms to coach one-on-one, and then they're being brought back to the main room. And there's a seamlessness about it that I think is really impressive. I'm curious, Don, has virtual training kind of exploded since COVID, or how many
I know it
programs are
has.
doing that, right now?
So I couldn't tell you because I'm not part of the accreditation or the
Okay.
credentialing staff. However, I do know enough about it. And by the way, I'm here in the ICF headquarters office in my own little office here.
I love
That's
how you
why
got your mask on.
I got my, only because I've got my doors here, and anytime I walk out, I've got to put it on.
Okay.
That's why I've got it just like this. So I do know, I've heard from members of the staff that a lot of training programs have pivoted to almost exclusively virtual in terms of their offerings. And so I know there's allowances for all that, and it seems to be
Yeah.
going well. I mean, I can't say enough about, I don't, I don't have Zoom fatigue yet. So we're hanging in there in terms of what we're doing. But seriously, I think it's a great way to deliver training. I know certainly nothing can really replace the in-person training when it's available. And I'm sure it's just a matter of time until everybody
Yeah.
gets that opportunity again. So
I've heard really good feedback from people who've had to start training and like they haven't had that in-person experience, and they were kind of blown away by how much they felt like they didn't really notice in some ways that it wasn't in person. I mean, of course they noticed it wasn't in person, but that it didn't have a negative impact on their experience, and that they were still loving it and connecting with other people, which I think is great, because I mean, when you don't know when something's going to end, I tell people, listen, don't wait until you think you can do it in person, because we haven't been able to predict anything that's happened in 2020 yet. So you might as well just kind of jump in, and then, in 3 months or in 6 months, if it starts to become more safe and you can open it up again and do it in person, you can just switch from doing it virtually to doing it in person. That's something we allow people to do, is mix and match. So we have another really good question about, does the program, and they're talking about iPEC, but I think this is actually just a good question in general. Do they have classes to support measuring success as a coach? So the way I'm interpreting that is, how do you measure someone's progress as a coach when they're going through a training program? And I think with iPEC, there's a number of ways that we do that. I mean, those intensive weekends are led by master lead trainers. And so you're getting a lot of feedback in the moment, and a lot of, you're being witnessed and you're being observed, and you're giving feedback right there and then. But we also, it's a requirement when you go through the ICF, correct me if I'm wrong, to have mentor coaching. Like you get a certain amount of mentor hours when you go through an ICF accredited program.
correct. Yeah. And so now we're kind of transitioning into the ICF credential, of which there are 3 levels of ICF credentials.
Right.
And really what the ICF credential is a 3 credential level, if you will, ACC being the first
Yes.
level, and then PCC being more intermediary business level, if you will, and then the MCC, which is the master level in terms of credentialing. Been around a long time. There's been a lot of improvements to the process. Yes, we require mentor coaching. Yes, if you've completed a accredited program, you don't have to pursue mentor coaching because you've already done it at the training level. So that's a real plus for accredited programs. But there's also, of course, the whole requirement of a certain number of coach training hours, or certainly completion of an entire accredited program. And if you have completed an accredited program, it's a real seamless process to go through to complete any of the credentials, with the exception of the MCC, which is a little bit more in depth and more requirements.
Yeah. So I would love it, because this is a question I get all the time.
Sorry.
What's that?
I'm just laughing. I'm ready for it. I want to hear it.
It's just a basic one for you.
Okay.
But we get it all the time as admissions coaches, which is, okay, once I've completed an ICF accredited program like iPEC, how do I get my ICF credential? Like, and I always tell them you're probably going to want to start with your ACC because it takes quite a lot of coaching hours to get to your PCC. So you got to work your way up. There's no way to like skip over ACC. I don't think that doesn't make any sense. So can you walk them through what it, the requirements of becoming an ICF credentialed coach after they finished a program like iPEC?
Sure. And I'll just talk a little bit about the ACC. So as I said, it's a pretty turnkey process if you've completed an accredited coach training program. And you would go through what we call the ACTP path. So you become a member of ICF, which will entitle you to a $200 member discount on the ACC credential. So it's $100 for that application. And what you will have to do is, obviously, you have to submit your certification from iPEC, and you'll upload that. What's really key is having completed the 100 hours of coaching experience or client hours. And of course, those client hours all have to have taken place outside of the four walls of the training program. You actually cannot count the ones that are part of the curriculum. But anything outside of the program, whether there's a requirement for paid client hours, 70, and then the rest can be and pro bono coaching. So once you do that, you'll attest that you have completed the 100 hours of coaching experience or client hours. And then you will go through a process of, it's about a 4-week process to verify all that. And in that process, you will also be sent the coach knowledge assessment, which is our examination. And of course, iPEC has its own examination, but it just follows nicely into our examination, which is a little bit different. It's all about the core competencies, code of ethics, and our definition of coaching. It's 155 questions. Takes you can do it online. You have up to 3 hours, and I think 70% is the pass rate. 70% is the passing score for that. And it's pretty. It's a good examination. It's a good process, and then you receive your ICF ACC credential once you pass that. PCC is a little bit more requirements, especially as it relates to the hours. But if the coach training hours, but if you completed the iPEC accredited program, you've got that covered.
Well, you've got all the training hours you need.
You've got all the training hours.
It's just accumulating coaching hours.
Yeah, it all comes down to really coaching hours.
Yeah.
If you will.
I tell people when they finish iPEC that it's really not a big leap at all to get their ACC, because all they really need is to accumulate, some more, especially those paid coaching hours. It took me about a year after I finished iPEC to get my ACC, and I was working full time and I was coaching in the evenings. So it didn't really but it was something that I could juggle. So we've had a couple of clarifying questions. So what does ACC and PCC stand for? I'll let you tell them that. Even though
sure. So ACC stands for Associate Certified Coach, PCC Professional Certified Coach.
Yes.
And MCC Master.
Yes. And then we have a good question about, so the ICF grants designations like ACC, PCC, MCC, and then iPEC's offering you something called CPC, which is Certified Professional Coach. So I'm going to explain this, and I want you to tell me if I'm right.
You're fine. Go ahead.
So the way I understand it is that most accredited coach training schools have, kind of their own designation. It's like when you complete their program, they have a title for you. Now, every school can kind of have a different title because they're allowed to sort of, call you what they want to call you. So when you go through iPEC, our title that you get is Certified Professional Coach. But what I like about the ICF is that because it's like the big regulating body of the coaching world, it makes things universal. And so that way, when you get an ICF credential, it's kind of an equalizing factor. So we might have gone to iPEC, someone else might have gone to a different ICF accredited program. they might have slightly different, designations after each of those programs. But now that they're both ICF, ACC level coaches, you kind of understand that they've had a similar experience and education and number of training and hours and all of that. So how right am I? Anything to add?
You're right on there.
Okay.
No, not really. But you're right there. And
Okay.
I want to just pause here for a second, because, and this is just a little advertising piece. So ICF just completed its 2020 global
That's
coaching
cool.
study.
I can't wait to see that.
PricewaterhouseCoopers did it with us. And actually there's a compendium to it, and it's called the COVID-19 and the coaching industry, which is a real follow-up on what
Wow.
this took a whole year to put together. The other COVID was put together over a few months' time. That went out to 10,000 people and asked follow-up questions. This is really all about trends that are going on in the coaching industry by regions and around the world. And I can just say this, and I'm gonna. It's a big statement, but I'm gonna make it anyways.
Okay, do
that
it.
That is the average annual income from coaching in U.S. dollars. Right now stands at 47,100. And mind you, that is just from coaching. So not to be included if you're also, just hypothetically, working in a coach training program, delivering coach training on the side and helping out there, or facilitating on your own, or I'm not even going to mention the last one, but it's in here. Consulting.
Okay.
People will do this in terms of their portfolio.
Yeah.
So that is a slight increase over the 2016 study. But I thought that was really relevant. And coaching is now a $2.8 billion profession worldwide. And there's even something on here that if you hold an ICF, so if you are a certified coach or hold an ICF credential, the amount of income you can earn is much higher from those who do not have that certification or credential, which is like, wow, it's music to our ears. I mean, it means this is really working.
Right. I mean, I tell people all the time, I just don't know that I don't know that I would feel safe hiring someone who's calling themselves a coach and whose background I know nothing about and whose training I know nothing about. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, there's no laws regulating coaching the way there is therapy. You can't call yourself a therapist and hope to not get arrested. I assume someone would eventually arrest you. That's not so with coaching. So there's freedom and flexibility in it, but then there's also, that's why the ICF exists, is because it's hard to verify and vet a coach if they haven't been to some sort of accreditation process. But back to that average, I want to remind people that that's an average too, so that people are making a lot more from coaching and also people are making a lot less. But making a lot less doesn't necessarily mean they're struggling. It might mean that they do it on the side and that they have a full-time salary and that they're just making, a nice side income, a nice side hustle, if you will, from coaching. That happens all the time. I mean, there's so many different ways you can apply coaching to your career. And I know coaches who are of every walk of life, people like me who've quit their job and started their own business and, have been, supporting themselves full time as a coach for years. But I also know people who regularly have just done it on the side as a complement to their career, or people who've been hired to do it internally and that they are, coaching executives internally, or they're facilitating, leadership and development internally. So that's just kind of a tangent in a way, but a really relevant tangent, I think, is people often ask, well, what can I do with the coach training certification? And will it be worth it? Like, is there a return on investment for me as a coach? And to me, the answer is hands down, yes, because there's not a day that's going to go by that you're not going to use what you've learned in coach training, because it's relevant to literally any thought and interaction you have with yourself or with anybody else. But also because there's just infinite applications for coach training and so many different ways that you could monetize it if you wanted to.
Agreed 100%, Rachel, no question. And I get to talk to people, and certainly, of course, correspond with people on a daily basis from around the world who are exactly what you're saying. They're only using, in a lot of cases, they're going through an entire accredited coach training program, but they're only using it in their own organization. And they might not even be coaching individuals in their organization, but it's bringing that coaching mindset to the workplace where it seems to be really resonating among people. And
Yeah.
it's just a better work environment without question. So, yeah.
So we've got a few more questions that I think
Sure.
are coming in here. Okay, so can the 100 hours that's needed for the ACC
Yep.
be counted from the last several years, or when does it start count? When do we start counting those 100 hours?
So once you've started, for example, a training program like
Yeah.
iPEC's, that's
Yeah.
when the clock starts.
You don't have to. Important here, you don't have to have completed IPEC or any coach, certified or accredited coach training program from the day that you enroll in that program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, but it has
Which
to
is
be
nice.
a legitimate program
Yes.
that meets the standards. Yes.
Yes. So you have to make sure it's ICF accredited, and then it's an ACTP, right, path.
Yeah, or there's an approved path too for smaller programs where
Okay.
people are getting less hours. Say they're going through module 1 or 2 of a program and stop there. Yes. Same.
Okay. So that's something to read the fine print on the ICF website, but no, you can't, we can't sort of backlog it. It makes sense.
No.
You have to count it from the day you enrolled in a certified program. Someone's asking a really good question about, do we see any regulation on coaching like coming down the pike at some point?
So I know it comes up in a lot of places around the world where it's brought up, and we don't have any hired lobbyists per se, but we do have people on the ground everywhere that are always looking into this and even making a case for ICF in front of some, for example, US state legislatures to explain what it is. And it usually comes from another discipline. I'm not going to say which one primarily, that'll bring it up and say, hey, we're really the coaching group, or because we're licensed, whomever, that we've got this space. And it's, and the coaches go out and in defense of coaching and currently being unregulated, tell the story of how many people they're coaching and how many people are being coached in that particular area or state or city. And it usually doesn't go through. But there have been a couple attempts around the world, pretty significant ones, that have been shot down because of that. So there's no regulation at this particular time.
Okay. I mean, I always think it's not a bad idea to have a credential from the ICF, right, because if it does happen, and also I'll say this, I've met plenty of people who were looking into jobs that were coaching, they were coaching related, or that they were directly, like someone was hiring for an internal coach at a big organization, like names you would recognize type of organizations. And an ICF credential was required to get that job. So that I see a lot, is that, people are more and more recognizing that the ICF, that it exists, and that it is a legitimizing thing to have as a coach. And so they're looking for it, and they can easily pass over someone who doesn't have it, because there's plenty of people who do. So
and so you're dead on with that. I just want to say that this is happening everywhere, literally, as we speak.
Yeah. So. Much more so, I think, than it was when I started 8 years ago. Like, I think it's it's
almost an exponential growth. It just keeps going, and yeah.
So someone has a clarifying question. She says, I graduated IPEC in 2013. So can I use all of my hours since then, or must they be more recent? I think the answer is, if you got your CPC from IPEC in 2013, then anything that you did since you started enrolling in IPEC would count toward your ICF hours.
Yes.
So
correct.
You probably have them by now, Julie. You might need to go back and do the math on that. And then Manuel wants to just clarify again. Okay, so I complete the program, and to get the ACC, I need 30 pro bono hours, 70 hours paid as a coach. I think there's 8 clients. Is it like 8 clients and 70 paid hours? Okay. Got to pass a test. And you have to have gone through a program that has at least 125 hours of coach training.
You have to have that designation of ACTP behind it.
Right. Right. So, and when you go through a program like iPEC, you have way more training hours than you need. So that's not something anyone worries about after they go through our program. And then of course there's a membership fee, which you then get a discount on applying for your ACC when you do that. Correct. And then how often, if you want to stay like a current member of the ICF, how often are you paying membership fees? I forget. So
it's on an annual basis. Our membership runs April through March of any year. Okay.
And then he's curious, okay, what's the, like, then how many, I mean, I actually feel like this is a really great thing to go explore more on the website because there's so much information, but if he wanted to get his PCC, then what would he do after getting the ACC?
So he could use the ACC hours for coaching experience or client experience. Those all apply going forward, as well as the coach training hours. So, but it's a moot point if you've already completed an ACTP program because you're going to go through that pathway. But yes, you wouldn't have to, the only thing you wouldn't have to do if you've already completed the exam is an ACC, you wouldn't have to retake it.
Right. And you don't need to go get retrained.
No.
But is there some continuing education hours or some volunteer hours, or I think it's 500 coaching hours, right? That you need to
for the PCC. Yes, you would need 500 coaching client or experience hours, 440 of which have to be paid. It has to be with 25 clients minimum as well.
Okay. And that builds on what you did with your ACC. It's not like you have to have 500 new hours. It's in addition to what you needed to get your ACC.
Now, I will say one thing, especially for the person we had referenced before who completed training in 2013, is that you still have to be so in order to show you still been coaching, some of the hours are going to have to have occurred with, these are the coaching experience hours, would have had to have occurred within the last 2 years of when you're going to submit.
Okay. Yeah. So we can't be applying. Right. It's not like we can not coach for 10 years and then apply.
And the practice and working. And
that makes sense. So a certain number have to be more recent, but that makes perfect sense. And if you're a coach who's applying for the PCC, that's probably not going to be a problem. You're probably going to be actively coaching all the time. So someone else wants to know, how do we prove the number of hours we've had with a client? Like, what's the evidence that you guys look at for that?
We ask for a coaching log. We don't ask for it. We used to ask for it. Now, because of GDPR, the European policy, we do not ask for it. You have to keep track of that on your own. Document it, because if you are audited, and by the way, my wife's a speech therapist and she got audited this year and ended up having to, this is long story short, having to go and prove herself and had to go out and even some of it was missing. And she, as a speech therapist, they have to renew every 2 years and she had stuff missing. She had to go back out and take another class. Long story short, $500 to go and do all this. And she got it all and it was accepted. You just, so for an ICF credential, it's renewable every 3 years from the expiration date of the credential. There are 40 hours of continuing education units that are required for this. Also, there is a requirement for renewal for mentor coaching, 10 hours of mentor coaching. And so you want to take a look at that as well.
So that's interesting because when I did it, we did have to submit a log But now, because of new
Right.
rules around privacy, it's more like, it's
You
like
have to
paying
keep
your
it.
taxes. Like,
Mhm.
you know what? Be honest about it, because the IRS might come get you if
And
you're not.
keep your stuff. Yeah,
Right. So it's the kind of the same. There's a random audit
absolutely.
and you might get audited. So be honest.
That's right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that makes sense. And I think most coaches are not going to be
Eh,
making up their hours. So that's not a problem.
exactly.
Okay. So we have, we always get questions around this. I'd be
Mhm.
curious to hear your take, even though it's not specifically ICF related, but we always get questions about marketing, finding clients, business development. So the way that it works at iPEC is that we have an optional business development program that is included in the tuition. You don't have to participate in it, but you are paying for it. So I'm like, hey, take advantage of that. Because obviously a lot of people have entrepreneurial desires when they come into, when they decide to become a coach. Some don't, but a lot of people do. And so there's going to be questions like, how do I find clients? How do I decide who I want to work with? And what's my messaging? How much do I charge? So I think that I might be wrong, but I think most programs do offer, or at least they should offer, some sort of business development support.
Mhm.
And also something that we do at iPEC, which I'm not sure other programs do, but we have something called a success coach, which you get it's like every couple months you get to have a session when you're going through the program with a success coach, and their whole job is to help you figure out, what do I want to do with my certification, and how do I find success as a coach in a way that's relevant to me, and getting to work with someone who's has maybe a lot more experience than you on that front, and can kind of help mentor you in that way, not just less in your coaching skills, because you're getting mentoring on that separately, but more in the like use of my certification and the business side of things if you want it. So I'm curious how I'm curious just any thoughts you have
Sure.
about the business side of coaching.
Super important. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many people come to us and ask for, well, where's the business component and how can I get involved in it? We do offer a business development series completely separately every 2 years,
Oh, cool.
and it's kept in our learning portal on demand, and it's fabulous. However, I will say I don't know how many training programs, certainly accredited,
Okay, well.
that do. I do know you guys do, and I think there's probably those that have the biggest global footprint. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, more than likely do have something there, even if it's
Okay.
above and beyond the curriculum in the ACTP. Maybe it's something you go back for. I'm not quite sure with all of them, but yeah, very important, because a lot of people, when they launch themselves as solopreneurs and going out there, where they get bogged down is that particular area of business development and marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to tell people just very, very realistically that becoming a coach and becoming a business person are two totally different skill sets, but that it's understandable that you would want your coach training school to offer some support in that arena, because you might be totally brand new and you might have no idea what you're doing. So I think that it's important to have some support. And, I see that as a launching off point to a lot of other learning and education that you might want to do for yourself. I certainly have taken all sorts of business courses, and I've had marketing coaches and business coaches over the years, and have had to learn. But I think that that's kind of part of what being a coach means, is that you're open to learning, and that you're not necessarily looking to have all of the answers before you even begin, that you're willing to kind of learn as you go. But that it's totally fair to want some support as you go. And of course, like, we're going to offer that to you. But I didn't know that it wasn't I guess I just thought it was so ubiquitous, but I'm glad to know that
Mhm.
actually it's not as common to have something that's that robust and that's going to also talk about the business side of things.
And I would say the smaller the coaching program is, and I don't want to generalize completely, but there's going to be less attention paid to that,
Yeah. Well, that
certainly.
makes sense. They might not have the
Yeah.
resources or the
No.
people or the experts to offer that to you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, someone's asking again, this is a little bit more IPEC specific, but they're
Mhm.
asking questions about weekend hours, scholarships, payment plans. So the way that it works at IPEC is that um, we have 3 intensive 3-day trainings spread out over 6 months. So if you were to start in November, you'd have another one in February, you'd have another one in May. And you can choose to do that either Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or you can do that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the majority of your weekend training at iPEC is those three kind of pillars of the training that happen over 6 months. The rest of it is mostly, at least with our program, pretty flexible. And most of it happens during the week, though you could choose to do some of your work on the weekend if you wanted to, the self-paced assignments you get. We also assign people peer coaches. So from the cohort they go through training with, they get to have a peer coach who coaches them once a week. And then one of their peers is their peer client. They coach them once a week, but you guys get to decide when to do that. We have a weekly online class that happens on a weeknight usually. So at least with iPEC, there's a lot. It's a deeply comprehensive training, but most of it's pretty flexible, at least like the virtual stuff that happens in between those 3 training weekends. And now that we have a completely virtual training option, that's even more flexible because there's no travel necessarily that has to be done. We don't offer scholarships or financial aid at iPEC, but we do accept some grants. So I've had people apply for grants and seen them do coaching that way. So that's maybe something to look into. We also have a lot of people get sponsored by their employer, which is something, if you haven't thought of, think about that. Because even if they don't pay for the whole thing, having someone contribute to coach training as part of like the personal development or professional development budget that year is very possible, especially if it's an ICF accredited program. I think sometimes that makes it like, oh, well, this is very legitimate. Sure, we'll give you some money to do that. And then payment plans, yes, we have a number of ways that you can choose to pay. And this is something that I would recommend talking to one of our admissions coaches in more detail about. But we can pay upfront payment plans. We even have a partnership with a credit union. You can apply for, we call it an iPEC student loan that way. And then if you get approved, you can fund tuition there. So there's multiple ways that you could make it work if you decide that this is the program for you. And I don't know, Don, I don't know what you think, but I feel like if it's a good coach training program, they should probably be offering you multiple ways to pay to make it convenient or to make it something that you can reasonably afford to do. Otherwise, I think you set the bar so high that there's only a certain type of person who can enroll in coach training. And I think it's important that a lot of different types of people be able to become coaches because we need coaches from every walk of life.
Agree 100%. I mean, no question about it. The more payment plans available, the better. Yeah, no question. So.
Okay, let's see if there's any, we're kind of at the 10-minute mark. So I want to see if there's any questions that I wanted to ask you that other people haven't thought of, but that I think are important.
Yep.
So what do you think we've kind of touched on this, but I think it's important. What do you think in terms of an ICF credentialed coach versus someone who is just maybe calling themselves a coach, or they've been to a coach training program that's not ICF credentialed? What do you think the difference is going to be between what those two people can go out and do in the world?
So I don't want to cast any aspersions toward any training program that is not ICF accredited. However, we claim that our process is really the differentiator, knowing that you're going to get the right coaches who've been trained properly and trained at the right level, so they can also get validated by one of the 3 ICF credentials and have those in hand at any given time. That's really it. I mean, because there's a lot of validation that goes into it, a lot of rigor. Gosh, we've been doing this for 25 years and it's only gotten better. And I think I will make a generalized statement. The coaching profession is here. And for a while, I wasn't sure if it was here to stay, but without question, it is here to stay. And it is going to continue to build and grow.
You know what? That brings to mind something that I think is really critical. And you were just talking about the COVID report.
Yes.
So I know what I've been telling people when they ask me this. I'm curious what you say. What do you tell people if they ask you why is now a good time to become a coach? It feels like the world is upside down. Wow. Is this really the right time to become a coach? What do you think?
So I agreed 100%. And I, for whatever reason now, and this is just my general take of having been on about a zillion webinars, not like this, but from other, just listen to other people speak, that everybody's at home. Everybody has this tremendous amount of time that they're trying to fill because a lot of them are working from home, operating from home, and that it's a great time to take advantage of improving your skill set and whatever it is and whatever you're aspiring to be. And I think this coaching piece is hugely important for the
Yeah.
world right now in terms of the situation we're in, not just epidemic wise, but also everything that's going on, at least in this,
Yeah.
in the United States. And I'm not going to mention it, but yes, no question about it. This is a great time to be a coach and make a difference.
Yeah. I, I've been telling people, I feel like people need coaching now more than maybe they've ever needed coaching.
Yeah.
And I would not I would not have any limiting beliefs about what's possible right now because, as a business owner, when COVID started, I thought, oh no, this is going to be bad. And it turns out that I've had a completely normal year, financially speaking,
Oh,
even amidst a pandemic, because I think some people might have put coaching on pause, understandably, but then there have been people who, because of what's happening, got catalyzed into wanting to work with a coach. Maybe they got laid off, or maybe just all of the topsy-turviness of the world really inspired them to want to go, take a intentional time out in their life and figure out, what do I really want? Because clearly you can't predict anything. So what am I waiting on? Why is it that I don't know who
yeah.
I am and what I want yet? And so I wouldn't be afraid to jump in if this is something you feel called to do, because there might be a lot of coaches, but there's always going to be more people who need coaching than there are certified coaches. I promise you that. So it's not, I don't see coaching as a world of competition at all. I feel like there's enough people who need coaching to go around. So I want to talk for just a couple more minutes about ICF, the ICF chapters, because there's
Sure.
local groups of people who I'm assuming are meeting maybe virtually now instead of
They
in
are.
person.
Yeah.
So
Almost all of them are.
there's so many local ICF chapters, which is a
Mhm.
cool way to meet other coaches in your community. And if you're thinking about becoming a coach, it might be cool to look into your local, the ICF chapter closest to you, and see if anyone's willing to maybe do a little bit of an informational interview with you or answer some questions about coaching. I mean, there's so many coaches who are willing and love to talk about the experience. So I just would love to hear a little bit more about ICF kind of membership and what happens when you're an ICF member, and then some of the chapter events and stuff you get to do when you're an ICF member.
Sure. So ICF membership really is all about that journey that you're on to become a better coach and really be part of a larger community and pursue a credential, hopefully, as well. And I would refer you to coachfederation.org because there's a ton of information there. But specifically about the chapters, you'd have to click on why ICF, and there's a chapter map, and you can find chapters all across the country and, quite frankly,
Mm-hmm.
around the world. Their area of focus is multifaceted, but primarily it's a place to meet and have community, professional development. And I know there's a lot of pro bono coaching efforts that go on in terms of the community. I don't know if you're in New Jersey or not, Rachel. I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm outside of DC.
Oh, you're outside of DC.
Virginia. Yeah.
Probably the biggest chapter well, no, without question, the biggest chapter in the United States is the Metro DC
Mm-hmm.
chapter.
It's pretty big. Yeah.
It's awesome, and there are some huge chapters, not only in the U.S. but around the world, and a lot of coaches are always there, willing to help new coaches who are coming into the profession and really answer a lot of questions that may be specific to them. Like I said, I've been here for 13 years and have literally watched the evolution of coaching from 12,000 members to
Yeah.
over 37,000 now. And there were 2,500 credential holders, and now 30,000 credential holders worldwide. So I've seen this whole explosion go on, and I don't see any stopping of it right now. As a matter of fact, I just think it's only going to grow in a real trajectory over the next number of years. So
I really agree. I mean,
yeah,
I just don't see that. I think that people are just super eager to,
question.
yeah, they're eager to get deep, and they're eager to figure out who they are and what they want, and they're no longer satisfied by the status quo. And I think they're realizing that they don't have to accept that we live in a world now where you're allowed to be fulfilled in your life and career and in, you know, your relationships. And
Right.
so, yeah, so I shared the Coach Federation site, and I'm also sharing the next step, you know, for iPEC is, if you have enjoyed this conversation and it's sparked a lot for you and you want to have a deeper conversation about this program in particular, then click on that link I just put in the chat box, and you guys can request a session with an admissions coach. Hey, you might end up with me. But you can have like a nice 30-minute conversation with someone from our admissions team who can help answer questions about this program, but really coach training in general. I think one of the best things about being a coach is that when I talk to someone about this program, I'm not trying to sell them on it. I'm trying to help them figure out who they are and what they want and whether this aligns with them. And if it doesn't, that's great. Then you got clarity around what you want. And if it does, awesome. Then, you know, come enroll in our program and become a certified coach. But either way, it's more about helping you get clear on what you want than anything else. So
Cool.
this has been really great. Thank you for coming on and being game to answer literally any question that was thrown at you, whether it was relevant to the ICF or not.
It's okay. That's okay. I'm
Hey,
a big supporter of coaching. So yeah, this
I
has been
agree.
a lot of fun.
Anything that can help people. I think there needs to be more coaches in the world. So anything that we can do to encourage people to become coaches, if they're on the fence, just dive in. I promise you, I've literally never met a single person who regretted becoming a coach.
There you go.
Not a single person. There's just no way that you regret becoming a more conscious, self-aware person who can help other people unleash their potential. There's not a lot of hand wringing about that. So
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And go to the ICF website if you want more information. Anywhere in particular that you want to direct them to?
CoachFederation.org,
okay.
Whatever you want to look at there.
Yeah. So much information on CoachFederation.org. They have a really great search feature where you can search for accredited programs based on what you're interested in or how many hours you're looking for. So you can take advantage of that. And then I also really recommend going and reading about each of in depth about what's the ACC versus PCC versus MCC if you have more questions about that too. So,
yes.
All right. Thank you. Awesome. We'll see you guys later.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.